Bruchim haboim. Welcome everyone. We're about to begin Be'ezras Hashem to get on Daf Pei Beis Amud Aleph, starting with the new Mishnah on Daf Pei Aleph Amud Beis. The Mishnah discusses burning a Korban Pesach that becomes disqualified, becomes Tamei. Says the Mishnah, Nitma Sholem Oiruboy, if either the majority of the Korban Pesach becomes Tamei or the entire Korban Pesach, the din is you burn the meat in front of the Beis Hamikdash with the pyre, with the Atze Hamarocha. The Gemara explain why. Nitma be'utoiva hanoisar, if part of the carbon, or noisar, that means after the carbon's time elapsed, the pasuk lo sasiu mimenu ad boker, the noisar, if you did leave noisar, then by eish tisroifu you should burn it. And therefore, if it's then left over till the following morning, the Korban Pesach has to be burnt. Where is it burnt? If it's either partially burnt or if it's noisar. Sorfi noisar bechatzroi sehen, oyal gagoi sehen me'ad se hatzmon. It's either burnt in their own courtyards or on the rooftops with their own wood. The Mishnah concludes, Hatzaikonim sorfi noisar lifnei abiro, those who are tight-fisted or stingy, they will burn the Korban Pesach that becomes nitma in front of the bira, in front of Beis Hamikdash, bishvil lehanois me'atze hamarocha. In order to then get benefit from the atze hamarocha, we're concerned that they're so stingy they might not come to end up burn the disqualified korban, the korban that's tamei, and therefore we allow them the dispensation to burn the Korban Pesach that's nitma in front of the Beis Hamikdash by the Atze Marocha. Ask the Gemara right away, my taima, what's the reason for the din in the Reisha? The Reisha states, when either the entire carbon or roiv of the Korban Pesach becomes tamei, then we burn it. We burn it in front of the bira with the Atze Marocha. Says the Gemara, my taima, Rabbi Yosi bar Chanina kedei levaishon, to embarrass those who allowed the Korban Pesach to become tamei, either roiv or kuloi, and therefore as a disincentive, they should be embarrassed because they should be more careful not to allow it to become tamei, either the roiv or the entire Korban. The second law, the second din in the Mishnah is if it's partially nitma or noisar. The Mishnah states they burn the Korban Pesach either gagosehem or chatzrosehem with their own eitzim, with their own wood. Ask the Gemara, Raminu, behold, we have a Mishnah that we learned earlier that contradicts that contradicts this. It states, V'chei mi sheyotza b'Yushalayim, and those who leave Yerushalayim, v'nizkar, and then behold, they remember sheyesh b'yodoi basar kodesh. There is basar kodesh from the Korban Pesach, or the Korban, we're talking about a Korban of kachim kalim, that they still have in their possession. The Mishnah states, im ovar tsoifim, then sarfoi b'mekoimoi. If they pass the place called Soifim, where you can still see the Makom Mikdash, if they pass that place, then they're enabled to burn it in their where they are. We don't matriach them to return to the Beis Hamikdash to then burn the meat in the Azara. V'im la, but if they have not yet got to the place of Soifim, on top of Pei Beis Amud Aleph, choizer v'tzorfoi lifnei abira, then we have them return to the Beis Hamikdash and they burn the meat over there in the Atze Marocha. Here we're talking about a meat that's a miut. It's either a kazayis or a kebetza, but al kaponim it's a miut. And the Mishnah by us states, however, they use their own eitzim. So why is that going to then, how is that going to fit into the Mishnah earlier that says they go ahead and burn the meat that they have in the Atze Marocha? Says the Gemara, Amar Rav Chame bar Ukva. The first answer is by Rav Chama bar Ukva Loikashya, kan be'achsanoi, kan be'balabayis. That which it states in the Mishnah earlier on, that you can allow them to go ahead and burn it in the Atzei Marocha, is talking about an achsanoi, a guest to Yushalayim. He does not have his own eitzim, and therefore we allow him to use the Atzei Hamarocha. Whereas our Mishnah is talking about the Balabayis who has his own eitzim. Rav Papa has another understanding. It's not a kasha because they're both talking about achsanoi. They're both talking about guests, but there's a chiluk, says Rav Papa. Kan shehichzik baderech, kan sheloi hichzik baderech. One achsanoi is already beginning his trek back home, and therefore we don't matriach him to go ahead and use it, wood that he has to seek out for himself. We allow him to go and use the wood of the ma'arocha. Mashe'en kain, if he has not yet started his trek back home, then we say he has to use and find his own eitzim. Rav Zvid Omar, third mahalich, is Rav Zvid. And he says, La'olam kida Omar me'ikara. It's really like we said before, a chiluk in achsanoi, and somebody who is a balabos. Says Rav Zvid, kan be'achsanoi, kan be'balabais. Even though he has not yet started his trek back home, still the achsanoi, kivon the lesle asu kitzikonin. Since he does not have his own eitzim, we treat him like those miserly individuals, like it says in the Seif of our Mishnah. We give them the kula to allow them to use the atzei hamarocha. Disnan hatzikonim sarfin oisoi lifnei abira. They go ahead and burn their carbon pesach that became nitma in front of the Beis Hamikdash. And the Mishnah goes on to say, Bishvil lehanos me'atzei hamarocha. So therefore we treat the achsanoi in the same way, since he himself does not machzik baderech. Therefore, even if he did not machzik baderech, but since he's an achsanoi, we allow him this dispensation to use the atzei hamarocha. The Gemara now brings a brayso tonu rabbanon bo'u l'sarfoi b'chatzroi sehen u'me'atzei hamarocha. Here the brayso states that those who are going to burn their carbon pesach that became nitma in their chatzeiros or in the and using the atzei hamarocha, Ein shoymim lohen, because that's contrast to what we said the din would be. They'd have to use their own wood. Lifnei habira ume'atzei atzmon. If they go ahead and bring it before the bira, and they use their own wood, also ein shoymim lohen. Because if you use bifnei habira, then the chara we said, then they don't have to use their own wood. They can use the atzei marocha. So we don't listen to them either. So Gemara explains. Bishlama me'atzei hama'arocha bechatzro saying ein shomin lohen. That's very well according to that which we said that they use the atzei hamarocha because, and then we don't listen to them when they're supposed to when they burn by the chatzro sehen, because dilma paishon minayhu. Maybe there's extra wood that's left over. And we're worried out if there's extra wood left over, they might come and use it for their own personal use, which is a problem because then it would be a problem of me'ilah, since it's used for consecrated. In this case, even though it's nitma, but that was permissible, if they then use it afterwards for their own personal use, then it'll be a problem. So therefore, we understand they're supposed to use. We understand. If they used it for the atzei hamarocha, because we don't want them to then make a mistake and make a takola by using personal wood. Ela lifnei habira, but if it's before the bira, before the Beis Hamikdash, me'atzei atzma my time aloi. Why is it that we say it's a problem to use your own wood? Rav Yosef Amar shaloi levayes es mi she'ein loi. Not to embarrass the one who doesn't have his own wood. And therefore, we say that we don't listen to him if he's going to use his own wood. Rava Omar b'bnei hachashad. Rava has a different mahalach. He says because of a chashad, that we're worried that if there's going to be wood afterwards of his own wood, and he goes ahead and brings it home, people will think he's using the atzei marocha and he's stealing from that to bring to his own personal use for his own home. My Beinayu asked the Gemara, what's the difference between these two opinions, both Rav Yosef and Rava, whether it's Shalol Vayesh or Mipnei HaChashad? Ika Beinayu, the Gemara says, would be a difference in the following case. The Aisi Koni V'chari Yoiso, the Lechazi L'Ma'aroch, if you use types of wood, either reeds or types of palm branches that are not roy, they're not fitting for the Ma'arocha, then there'll be a nafkamina over here. Because according to the one Rava who says Minah Chashad, there's no Chashad. Because everybody knows you're not supposed to use such a wood for the Ma'arocha, and therefore it's his personal wood. Masha'en Kain, according to Rav Yosef, the opinion that says Lo Levayesh, it doesn't make a difference what type of wood you use. According to him, you would now be allowed to use any personal wood as not the Mevayesh, the person who might not have his own personal wood. Tnan Hassan, the Gemara brings a Mishnah in Mishnayos in Masechet Tamid, which also brings out a similar machlokes in Rava and Rav Yosef. It states in the Mishnah, Roish HaMa'amod, the Roish HaMa'amod, they would have Ma'amodim that would be people who were appointed to stand on top of the karbonos, to be present at the time of the karbonos, namely over there the Korban Tamid, which was a communal offering, so that they have a representative on behalf of Klal Yisrael that would be standing by the carbon. And those Maimados would be 24 different Maimados, corresponding to 24 different Mishmaros of the Kohanim, which would then serve in the Beis HaMikdash 2 weeks of the year. And it says, the Roish Ma'amod, Haya Maimid Es Hatmein, El Shah HaMizrach. One of the jobs of the Rosh HaMa'amod was that he would stand up those Kohanim who were supposed to be have that avodah of the day. That was their day to do the avodah. The Mishmeres is broken up to different days, Batei Av, and that day they have different Kohanim that are designated for that day's avodah. Well, those Kohanim who became Tamei, they can't do the avodah. So one of the jobs of the Rosh HaMa'amod is to stand up, present those Kohanim become Tamei, Al Shar HaMizrach, which is the entrance in the eastern Shar, so that people will know that these Kohanim cannot do their avodah. My Taima asked the Gemara, what's the reason for this? Rav Yosef, Kedei Levaishon, in order to then embarrass these Kohanim. They should have been more careful not to become Tamei, knowing that the next day they have the avodah. That night before, they should be very careful to then desist or prevent themselves from becoming Tamei. So therefore, now that they did become Tamei, they present them in the Shah Mizrach to then mevayesh them. Rava Omar, Rava says, Chashad. Rava says, because of the Chashad. In other words, people are choshed that maybe these people, these Kohanim, are not doing the avodah because they want to then participate in their normal malacha. On that, the Rosh HaMa'amod stands them up to say that no, they're Tamei. My Beinayu asked the Gemara, what's the dafkamin between Rav Yosef's opinion, who says Kedei Levaishon, and Rav's opinion to say because of Mipnei HaChashad? Ika Beinayu mefanki. One nafkamina would be those who are mefankim, those who are people who don't work anyways. So according to the first opinion of Rav Yosef, Kedei Levaishon would still be applicable, but according to Rava, Mipnei HaChashad, there's no chashad. These are people who don't work anyway, so therefore not coming to then to run away from the avodah to do their normal type of labor, because they don't have normal labor to do. Inami the kogadil shishura. The Gemara brings another nafkamina, somebody who has a menial job who makes types of thread. He makes types of ropes, and that type of job of making ropes, that is not very lucrative, and therefore there's no reason why a person would then try to miss the avodah in order to then be involved with his own normal labor for profit, because there's no real profit, not a great profit being done by somebody who is Godil Shishuro. So the nafkamina would be, again, here, Kedei Levaish according to Rav Yosef is still applicable. But according to Rava's opinion, Mnei Chashad does not exist, because the no Chashad, a person will not, again, try to avoid the avoida so that he can do his job and make money. He's not going to make very much money anyways. And therefore, this is not going to be a Chashad. The Mishnah now continues the previous Mishnah and speaks about burning a carbon Pesach that becomes Tameh or Nifsal. Says the Mishnah, Ha-Pesach sheyatza or shenitma, a carbon Pesach that goes out of its place outside the walls of Yerushalayim, or becomes Tameh, the din in the Mishnah is Yisaref miyad, immediately it should be burnt. Nitmu habaylim oishemesu. But if there's a reason why it becomes Tameh from an outside reason, either because the baylim are Tameh or they have died, then it's not intrinsic to the carbon. And in contrast to the ratio that says we should burn it immediately, here the din is to ubar tsurasoi v'yisar v'shisha asar. You should let it change its appearance, meaning to say, let it become noisar and still be left over until the next morning, whereby you'll burn it only then the next morning, the 16th of Nisan. Rabbi Yochanan ben Broika Oimer, he says, Af ze yisarv miyad, lefi she'ein lo oichlin. Since there are no bailim, there are no oichlin over here, it's like it's an intrinsic psul in the carbon, whereby Rabbi Yochanan ben Broika says you should also burn it immediately. Says the Gemara, Bishlama Tameh, because the Mishnah says in the Reisha, two reasons. Either that the carbon itself becomes Tameh, or if it indeed is Yatza, then you should burn it right away. The Gemara says, Bishlama Tameh, in the case where it becomes Tameh, then it's very well. See if it says in the Pasuk why we burn it right away. The Pasuk says it openly. V'habasar asher yiga b'kol Tameh, and the meat that becomes Tameh, Lo yoichal be'esh yisaref. Do not eat it, burn it by the fire. So here we know clearly from the pasuk, openly, that when the carbon, it's talking about carbon kachet kalim, that when it becomes tameh, then it should be burnt right away. That we understand. Ela yaitse minola. But that which the Mishnah says, that when it goes out of the azara, it leaves its place, in this case, the place where it's supposed to be, even the walls of Yerushalayim. So why is it that you should burn it right away? Gemara brings a pasuk, Disiv. Now, the pasuk says really a give and take between Moshe and Aaron. Moshe questions Aaron why, when it comes to the carbon chatos, it wasn't eaten. I'll read you some of the psukim. It says, Madua lo yachaltem es hachatos v'mokam hakodesh. Why did you not eat the carbon chatos in the mokam hakodesh? Ki kodesh kadoshim hi. It's a carbon of kodesh kadoshim stature. V'oisa nosen lachem loseis is oven ha'edo. It was given to you in order to then bring a kapora for the edo for Klal Yisrael. Lechaper aleim lifnei Hashem. The next pasuk goes on to say, Hey, and behold, loihuva es dama el hakodesh pnima. You did not bring its dam to the inner part, meaning to the heichal. Achal teichlu oisoi. Therefore, you should have eaten it. Ba'kodesh kasher tivisi, in the kodesh, like I commanded. Now go back to the Gemara. Eloyoytze minon. The Gemara asks again, where do we know from the psukim that you should then burn its meat when the carbon goes out of its place? Dirsiv, the Gemara brings the pasuk. Hein, behold, loihuva es dama el hakodesh pnima. Behold, the dam was not brought to the inner part, meaning to the sanctuary, the heichal. Omar loy Moshe le Aharon. Moshe questions Aaron and says to him, Madua lo yachaltem es hachatos. Why did you not eat the carbon chatos? Shema nichnas dama lifni lefnim. Did you not bring? Maybe you had brought the dam. Here's lavdafka lefayim doesn't mean the kodesh kadosh. It means you didn't bring it. Perhaps you brought the dam inside of the heichal, the sanctuary, the heichal, and that would have then made it so it's possible to eat. Or my Lord lav. Our response is no. I did not bring the dam to the heichal. Or Marloi, so Moshe then questions, Shema, chutz mechitzasa yatzasa. Maybe outside of the walls, you brought the dam, and that's why you have to then burn it, and you did not eat it. Or Marloi lav, again, says Aaron, negative, no. Bakodesh haisa, it was in the Azara. Or Marloi, so Moshe says to him, I bekodesh haisa, if it remained in the kodesh, I didn't bring it to the inner sanctuary, meaning to the heichal. It remained in the azara. So then why didn't you eat the carbon chatos? Asked Moshe to Aharon. Michlal. So the Gemara now proves from here its question. Michlal, the inafka, if it did go out from the azara. Inami ayel dama lifnim, or the blood was brought into the heichal. Then bas sreifahi. Then it has to be burnt, and that's the source for our Mishnah. It says when a korban Pesach was brought outside, it was yotza, it has to be burnt immediately.